Karden, I think that understanding the nervous system is so critical for our health on every level, mind, body, spirit. And I'm just curious how you came into this work. I know you worked in body work for many years, but why specifically the nervous system and your interest in this very critical area of our healing and well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does touch on everything. And it's the through line between so many of those layers: psychology, physiology, spirit, energy, and it weaves them together. And the way I found my way in is after college, I became a massage therapist and loved every aspect of body work and functional movement. And I used to say that I worshipped at the throne of anatomy and function. If I could just get all of the body to be aligned, quote unquote, the way it's supposed to be,
Mm,
and if I could get it to move exactly how it was designed to move, then all the problems would go away.
yeah.
Now, sometimes that worked, but
Okay.
sometimes it didn't,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm also, although I like to say I'm a scientist that believes in magic, which means I'm very grounded in science, but I'm not closed-minded. Like I am, I love things that I don't understand as much as that I do. But the scientist in me, the empiricist in me, the one who's obsessed with identifying the fundamentals, the physics of how systems, including humans, work, was pissed. Like, why did doing all the quote unquote right things with this body get this person out of low back pain, but doing the same thing with this body didn't get them out of low back pain? And moreover, my own low back pain was getting worse year after year after year. My low back pain started in my early 20s. My mom, one could say that she died of chronic low back pain because she abused opioids to treat it. And she died from an opioid overdose or opioid abuse, long term prescribed opioid abuse,
Mm,
when I was just 21 years old.
sorry.
And so here I am. I've tried to take a completely different track. I'm healthy. I do body work. I'm fit. I got with Pilates. I have a core and a powerhouse that can turn coal into diamonds, right? But I'm still in pain.
Oh no.
WTF, right? And um, when I was in the worst bout of my pain, 4, 5, 6 months of just unrelenting agony, low back pain, iliotibial band syndrome, lightning storms of shocking electrical style pain in my groin and down my calves. I mean, really, really bad, Michelle.
Mm,
And nothing I was doing was working. Powerhouse, movement, massage, osteopathy, chiropractic, Chinese medicine, just progressively worse. Um, I found at my friend's home on the bookshelf a book the thickness of my pinky that was John Sarno's Healing Back Pain, which you may have heard of some of Sarno's work.
mhm,
And that book was the first book ever that I was introduced to the idea that personality type and
mm.
emotions could play a pivotal role in the brain creating pain in the body. I'd never been introduced to that concept before.
Yeah.
And besides the fact that his book and his kind of description of my personality type and the potential emotional repression I was experiencing, it fit like a glove. And within a week of reading his book, I had the most significant improvement in my chronic pain that I'd had in 10 years.
Wow.
It was astounding.
Wow.
And, and, you know, although some folks might have dismissed it to the placebo effect, which, by the way, I don't care. I, as a form of medicine, believe that we should be honing the placebo effect to heal ourselves, because the that's how the mind and body work. We'll get to that later. All right.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but I could never go back to the way I practiced before. This is how we get to the nervous system, right?
Yeah.
All this time, I am working on bodies as if they're just made of hardware. When you have a problem with your computer, Michelle, do you start hitting it and banging it and twisting it and try to put it back in the right shape?
Sometimes. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. If you're pissed, you want to go Office Space
I'm
style on it and
teasing.
like just wreck it, right?
Right, right.
But with almost every electronic device in our life, we assume there's a software or a connectivity problem
Mm.
first, right? If your printer's not printing, you don't just start ripping it apart or trying to mechanically fix it. You're like, maybe I should check the drivers, the software, the connection, reboot my computer. You actually treat the machines in your life like they have nervous systems, but you treat your own body like you're some 17th century crossbow, right? With that just needs to be banged and put back together.
Yep.
And the truth is that the brain and the nervous system are the central component, the central decision makers, the central actors, the central controllers of everything from your pain response to the whether you're stuck in a state of depression and general melancholy, joy and optimism, bipolar, all the way down to autoimmune disorder. That's all being coordinated and decided by the nervous system, which then, as we can go on, obeys a logic that we're now really starting to understand and influence.
Okay. This is so good. And when you were talking, I got goosebumps when you talked about your healing. Like,
Mm.
that's profound. And yes, yes to the placebo. Yes to the power of the brain believing. I love that you said you're a scientist that believes in magic. Your book is The Secret Language of the Body. It's a language, and we need to learn this language in order to get the healing that we all deserve. I'm curious, though. Well, let's have you first define nervous system dysregulation, just so that everyone who's listening knows what we're talking about as we move forward. And then I want to get into specific questions about how it shows up in the body in case somebody's like, how do I know if I have that or not?
Totally. So, to go the barest bones approach here, your brain and nervous system is operated by like it has an operating system. It has a prime directive. It has a purpose. And its only job
Yes.
is to keep you safe, or more essentially to keep you alive. That's its primary job.
Yep.
Or as I like to say, its job is to not die. Period. And then
Mhm.
just like a computer produces every single software we've ever seen, every algorithm we've ever seen is still based on a binary of 0, 1. Your brain and nervous system is making incredibly complex decisions and creating incredibly complex physiology based on safe, unsafe, safe, unsafe, safe, unsafe. Period. That's the only like it hurts my heart to say that the sum total of humanity's nervous system still boils down to zeros and ones, but it's safe and unsafe. All the amazing art we've had in history, all the innovation, all the love, and all the pain is still based on a system determining safe, unsafe, good,
Mhm.
bad, yes, no, ouch, ooh. That's it.
Mhm.
And nervous system dysregulation is many things, but it's essentially when your brain and your nervous system and the operating system that's supposed to keep you alive is primarily in a state of survival. It's
Mhm.
perceiving the environment, the world, yourself, your own thoughts, your experiences, you name it. Many more things than should are getting the label as dangerous,
Mhm.
right? And then it's mounting a threat response. And that threat response, many people have heard of in its most uh, simplistic is fight, flight, fawn, appease, and then there is freeze, shut down, and collapse. This is the staggering nature. That's all it's got. Okay. Like no matter what enters the arena, it only has this fixed system of evolutionarily programmed responses, whether that threat is um, abandonment from your mother, abuse from your father, um, not having enough money, having a business deadline, wolves, climate change, the political situation, all of that is get interpreted as a zero or one, safe or unsafe. And if it is deemed as unsafe, even if it's just someone giving you like bad news about something that like a that happened to your friend's family, that hits you as, ooh, not good. Then I'm going to emote with some maybe sadness or grief, or maybe I'm actually going to get a little anxious because all of a sudden I'm a little afraid what's going to go on with my family. And this cascade of mind and body physiological responses happen. And so the state of nervous system dysregulation is a predominant state of your body and your brain and body saying things are dangerous. I'm going to be continually, to one degree or another, mount a survival stress response, as opposed to being in a state of essentially ease, safety, equilibrium, parasympathetic. When I do get a little activated, I come back down to baseline. When I get a little sad, I come back up to baseline. That's regulation, the capacity to go up and down and return to baseline,
Mm.
where you're essentially generally at ease and um, resilient and capable, versus dysregulation. You're actually usually never at baseline, and you're either stuck in some kind of very active response of anxiety, or stuck in a very collapsed response of depression and low energy,
Mm.
or you hockey stick from one to the other, bypassing baseline. That's
Okay.
nervous system dysregulation.
And for you, it showed up as back pain?
Well, it showed up in a lot more ways than just back pain. So, um,
Yeah, so tell us how it
yeah,
could
yeah,
show up,
yeah,
because now I'm
yeah.
curious about, right, what are how might
So
it manifest?
you know
Yeah,
what? We'll go from top to bottom.
go for it.
Um, your overall nervous system state, your brain's perception of safe or unsafe, of whether you're in a survival mode or not, is going to taint and influence every single feature of you. So if we start in the mind, someone who tends to be in a state of stress and activation that is sympathetic in nature, active, they're going to be anxious. They're going to be vigilant. They're going to have overthinking thoughts. They're going to constantly be thinking about controlling environments. They're going to constantly be thinking about other people's emotions. They're always going to be planning their day. When they actually try to sit down and relax, they can't do that because they're thinking about the next thing, or they're thinking about getting their friend water, or they're thinking about the email they have to respond to, right?
I'm
Um,
laughing because I have a little bit of that.
oh, all of us do. And within a certain capacity, and also with its ability to stop it.
Yes, yes.
Having an active mind is not a bad thing, but that's an example of being in a sympathetic, a survival state on the mental plane where you're pervasively active, overthinking, overanalyzing, over worrying, over catastrophizing, the incapacity to do that. By the way, that's the sympathetic side. That's the active side. The other end of the survival spectrum is the parasympathetic shutdown, depression, low energy response.
Mm.
We can talk about that more, but when your threat response system starts to get overwhelmed, it goes out of the active response of fight, flight, anxiety, and vigilance, and collapses into basically the surrendered, depressed, hopeless state.
It's
That's what
like
we
your
call it.
software shuts down.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's built anatomically off what's called the dorsal vagus, the dorsal aspect of your vagus nerve.
Mm.
In short, we inherited that from our reptilian ancestors, were basically non-movement and shutdown. Predators aren't interested in dead prey, right? A possum is a perfect example of the dorsal response. A
Wow.
possum gets scared and it just goes limps and collapses. In humans, the most classic example of it is when those who faint when their blood is drawn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a brain interpreting in their brain just happens to interpret blood drawing as terrifying,
Mm.
and they bypass the fight response and the flight response, and they just faint, the ultimate aspect of a dorsal vagal response.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, but that, but functional, if you will, functional dorsal vagal are thoughts that are sluggish, brain fog, melancholy thoughts, depressive thoughts. It's hopeless thoughts. That's the nervous system state, the survival state, completely taking over, again, your cognitive plane. In our work of doing nervous system medicine, and those of us who are who are somatic experiencing practitioners like myself who work with these mental states, we don't view depression as a disease that's biochemical in the mind. We see someone who's stuck in a dorsal vagal state, and we do all sorts of physiological and neurological actions to move them out of collapse, and then their mind clears up.
So they can heal from it. It
Oh,
doesn't, because a
a
lot of
million
this stuff
percent.
is old, isn't it? Isn't a lot of this, well, is most of it, or tell us
Well,
about that.
you mean the wounds that got you there?
Yes, the wounds.
Yeah, let's go to history in a couple minutes. We'll just talk
Okay,
about how it manifests in the now.
please
But
go for
yes,
it.
we can do that. So that's on the mental plane.
Yeah.
In the body, states of survival are going to feel like increased heart rate. They're going to feel like constriction in the chest. A lot of people have POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, where their heart does funny things where they go up and down.
Hmm.
Most tension held in the body, almost all forms of chronic tension are forms of some kind of survival response being immobilized or inhibited in the body. Um, we'd go as far to say that almost every gut issue you have is related to a dysregulated nervous system.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about the enteric nervous system and the gut-brain connection, but they only talk really about how nutrition affects the brain. No one is talking about how your brain F's up your gut. And you need to work on your brain and your nervous system, especially for diet and nutrition resistant gut issues. I could go on and on. As for pain, pain's essential purpose in evolution is to warn you of danger, especially to your physical self. What can often happen, a brain that's in survival state all the time is in a state of perceived danger all the time. So the pathways of pain in a brain that is dysregulated in a survival state become oversensitized, overreactive to stimuli and to perceptions of pain. And so, an area that's kind of like a benign or normal injury to one person who has a regulated nervous system, that same benign or normal injury to a dysregulated person is perceived at a much higher level of threat and therefore gets a much higher pain response from the brain.
Mm.
Moreover, if you have trauma from when you were a kid and you have a lot of repressed emotions that your brain deems as scary and dangerous, it will label those emotions with pain so that you feel pain instead of the emotions.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
that was largely what was going on with me as one of
Interesting.
my symptoms, because what was underneath my pain was basically a huge amount of really, really, really hurtful and awful repressed emotional content from my childhood.
Mm. I think everyone experiences some level of it, right? And so as we get older, we may not realize that these wounds existed or what happened. And I'll actually share a story I've never shared
Mm,
publicly. I think very
wow.
few people know this, but when I was about 8 years old, I was in my parents' home in the driveway on my little yellow bike by myself. I don't know where my brothers were that day. And a station wagon came slowly in front of the house. Two men, one in the front seat, a man in the back seat gets out. And he says, "Hey, little girl, come over here." And
Mm,
so I dropped my bike. This might make me emotional because I haven't really talked about it. Ran upstairs, hoped that they didn't follow me into the garage,
yeah.
go to the front window. I watched them drive down our dead end street and back out. Totally forgot about that experience. Came up once in therapy. I'm like, I think I dreamt that. I'm not sure, but there's this memory. So fast forward, I'm probably 40, my daughter's maybe 2, holding her, leaving my parents' house. It's nighttime. With my husband, we're walking down the stairs. The station wagon pulls up. This is our new neighbor. Didn't know that. My body all of a sudden went into freeze mode. Like I was just like, I said to my husband, "Don't
Mm,
move." I mean, I was in complete, like, I just went right back. I was like, oh my God, we're in danger. I got to protect my baby.
wow,
And
Michelle.
so I started to realize, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm when I walk and I'm out and there's I'm hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
I still do this. I
Yeah.
still do this. And so I'm just sharing the story because I think, It's not showing up as pain. It doesn't happen all the time. I'm mostly relaxed. But in certain situations, my brain just shuts, like it just
Boom,
freezes.
bam. It just exactly, it
Boom,
just freezes like
freezes.
completely competent, functional woman, then kapow, right?
Kapow.
We have a statement in the book, which is that your nervous system remembers things that you do not.
Correct.
Now, you actually have some explicit narrative memory of this. You know when it happened. And 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 also fear is an extraordinary teacher. So again, that brain, that nervous system, its prime directive, don't die. I got to keep you alive. Zeros and ones, safe,
Yeah.
unsafe, right?
Yeah.
When it learns a lesson, especially young, with a huge amount of terror and adrenaline.
And I didn't tell anybody because I just didn't. I guess I wanted to forget immediately. I don't
Yeah,
know.
which is also part of one of the ways the body and mind, the brain protects us, right?
Yeah.
That was awful. I'm gonna disassociate
Yeah.
from
Right.
that.
Maybe it wasn't real. I dreamt that. No,
Yeah.
I didn't dream it. Yeah.
And in this instance, right, I'm not going to call like how it's affecting you present. I'm not going to call it benign, right? But it happens in some rare instances where your brain and adrenaline.
And I didn't tell anybody because I just didn't. I guess I wanted to forget immediately. I don't
Yeah,
know.
which is also part of one of the ways the body and mind, the brain protects us, right?
Yeah.
That was awful. I'm gonna disassociate
Yeah.
from
Right.
that.
Maybe it wasn't real. I dreamt that. No,
Yeah.
I didn't dream it. Yeah.
And in this instance, right, I'm not going to call like how it's affecting you present. I'm not going to call it benign, right? But it happens in some rare instances where your brain, we like to another thing we like repetition machine.
Wait, you just broke up from your brain and I heard repetition machine. You
It's
froze. I can
oh
edit this
sorry,
out, but just say that
our
again, please.
brain is a our brain is a pattern recognition and habit repetition machine.
Mm,
It saw enough ingredients of the pattern of that terrifying moment when you were a child that this wonderful, beautiful, evolved system that keeps you alive said, this is terrifying and dangerous. And its response when you were a child was actually adaptive. You ran away. All right. By the
yeah.
way, another child might have accidentally gone into the fawn response, thinking that its best sense of safety would be to appease and go
Mm.
into the danger.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now as an adult, you froze, right? You kind of that's also not particularly functional, right? Fortunately, you were with, your partner and things like that.
And then also the neighbor was like, "Hey," I'm like, "Oh, hi." It was like,
Shake it right out of it.
yeah, it shook me right out of it, and I could be a normal human being again. But yeah,
And people with a lot of trauma, attachment injuries, and chronic stress in their life from the past are their lives are being dominated by those kinds of experiences you just described moment to moment in various ways every day. They are responding with threat responses that were what we could say were adaptive in the past to everything that comes at them as an adult now. And they wonder why they can't feel like themselves. They wonder why they can never relax. They wonder why they're always tight. They wonder why they're always anxious. They wonder why they're always depressed. And this is the beautiful thing about this. It's interesting how by abstracting out this concept called the it's given people this way
yeah. I
back
don't know
in
why you're freezing again. Abstracting out of. I don't know
oh
why it's freezing. It could
you know
be
I,
my end too. I don't know. I'm
just a
sorry.
moment. Let me check my speed. I am plugged in for you, so
Okay, let me check mine
I do
too.
have an
Is
idea.
that okay?
I do have one other window open, and I'm gonna close it.
Okay, but and I'll help you remember. You said something about by abstracting, and we'll just pick it up there. The beauty of
Yeah, yeah,
video, you
I
just
know what I
edit
meant.
it. Yeah.
Post
Okay.
production. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so it's interesting. Now that we have this new language, we found this abstraction called the nervous system. Whereas before, all these things we're talking about when they were, we've had this awful taboo in this country around mental health and psychology forever. But the nervous system, people are like, wait, that makes sense. I get this. And also, this isn't me or some flaw to my personality or character or will or mind. It's that I have this freaking nervous system in me that has a job. And it's trying to do that job. And sometimes it got really poor programming from a bunch of crappy experiences, and it's still running amok. And whoa, I could do this work called nervous system regulation, where I start to become aware of the secret language of the body, become aware of the signatures and the signs in mind and body that I'm stuck in survival mode.
Yes.
And that the reason why I don't feel like myself ever or only for brief periods of time is because I'm so frequently stuck in this mode, and that I could do these various techniques which uh, coach my brain and nervous system back into safety and ease and empowerment. And without much work, I'm like, whoa, I feel that's so much better. It's giving people a way in like never before.
Mm. It's so powerful. I mean, I love this conversation, and we've covered it a little bit on the show, but I love the tools that you give in the book.
Mm,
There's so many, and it's so accessible. And I think anything that gives someone a sense of hope that there's a different way and a different path forward, that in itself is like encouraging. And then it gives you actually obviously give the tools. But let's just stay on something that you talked about too. So mental health issues are skyrocketing, anxiety, what's the latest gen? I think Gen Z now, they're known as like the anxious generation.
mhm.
There's, struggling with anxiety. So you talked about symptoms showing up. It can be pain, it can be depression, it can be anxiety, it can even be autoimmune conditions.
Totally.
Right. And you even mentioned food sensitivities. I have a ton of food sensitivities. I don't know what the connection is there, but
Uh-oh,
is that
Michelle,
the,
I'm bringing it to you right now. So
yeah, go for it. I can
let's
handle it.
let's look at food sensitivities from a nervous system lens for a moment.
Okay.
Okay. So, um, safe, unsafe, safe, unsafe. When essentially when your body is under stress, when it has a history of trauma or danger, it has a propensity, um, just like allergies, to mislabel benign substances as dangerous.
Okay. I'm going to give you one more clue to this puzzle, though. A year after that incident, I got put in a back brace for 6 years for scoliosis and could not take a full breath 23 hours of the day for 6 years. The back brace came off and the food allergies came.
Right.
Oral allergy syndrome immediately. Like within a month, I couldn't eat an apple anymore.
So that's awful and fascinating.
Yes, it is. I find it both too.
All right.
Yes.
Bodies and brains are weird. So we'd have to do a bunch of work together to see exactly what needs to be uncoupled, if you will.
Yeah.
But um, the way our posture is shaped is a huge determinant of the way all the rest of our physiology will or won't work, right? I loved the interview you did with James Nestor, right?
Yeah. Did you listen to that?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, he's lovely. Yeah.
He's lovely, and he's made such a
Oh,
contribution to the
his work is
well-being of humanity.
fascinating.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
So you already know that if we're going to be dysregulating the breath, we're going to be having all sorts of negative impacts on the body. But the other thing is that the body learns that even if it's unsafe, what it's used to is what it prefers.
Oh,
So,
that's
classic
fascinating.
example is like a lot of people who are in abusive households end up being with abusive spouses because we have this very unfortunate proclivity for familiarity.
Mm,
All
safe,
right.
unsafe. Yeah. What
Safe,
it
unsafe.
perceives. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so fascinating, Karden.
So, needless to say, what happened to you both with that traumatic incident with the kid, with the abductees? Thank God you're okay.
Thank you.
Then having basically yourself immobilized, which is very disorienting and very, very undermining to your threat response system. Because if you can't move, very well, you're not surviving very easily. All right.
Yeah,
Oddly, also though, I don't want to get too complicated, but the brace was by wearing it so long, it became part of your protection.
it did. Yeah.
When that brace came off, with no support, by the way, no one's like, this is how you live life post brace. Okay.
100%. I'll be calling you after this is over to unpack that because I need some help with that, but that's a separate issue. Yes.
Yeah. The whole system was disoriented again. What do I do without my armor?
Interesting.
But to get you back to food sensitivities outside of your particular situation, when the nervous system is generally in a place of trauma, stress, attachment injuries, when the uh, scales have been shifted more towards the world is dangerous, benign substances or substances that cause small irritation, just like the pain example I gave earlier, get an outsized response from the immune system in the gut. Worse yet, our modern nutritional system is obsessed with elimination, and they're obsessed with training you that food is dangerous. You're getting me on a soapbox here.
Go for it.
I've helped thousands of people who are down to 4 or 5 foods eat whatever they want, Michelle, because food is not dangerous. If you
Mm,
are celiac or you have an anaphylactic situation, that would be the main one that's outside this conversation. But
yes.
from a nervous system perspective, you're in a high state of stress. You have a food that maybe has too much dairy, which caused you some discomfort. It learns because it has this outsized reaction to danger. Oh my God, that was bad. The next time that same food comes into you, the nervous system leads the response in the gut, creates the symptoms, creates the inflammation, creates the unnecessary reaction to the food that just came in. With the nervous system regulation techniques that we've trained our folks into, you learn how to maintain states of safety throughout your physiology, including your gut. And moreover, we reject this ever closing noose. Speaking of a brace, the way food elimination diets work, they add to fear. That food is bad. That food will do this to you. This food has that many glycophosphates into you. Gluten is going to murder you. Dairy was never designed. They create this psychology that amplifies the fear that's already in the dysregulated nervous system. And
Mm.
I've never met anyone who goes down the elimination path that doesn't go further and further down it, where the next year they're like, yeah, now nightshades are off the list. I was okay with them for 4 years, but now they're not there anymore. And then another year passes and they're like, yeah, I can't really do nuts anymore either. I'm basically down to like avocados and like cassava flour or some bullshit, right? And that from the nervous system perspective, you're just creating more and more fear and the system can't work.
Interesting. It's like a desire to control. So the control becomes elimination. It's like you're fooling yourself to thinking maybe you're doing something, and then the body jumps on board and is like, okay, you don't think you can eat that? Now I'm scared of it too. Let's
Correct.
not have those
And
nuts
both
anymore.
you and the gut are becoming in a perpetual state of vigilance and fear.
Oh gosh, it's fascinating. But what about autoimmune disease? It's same thing?
So autoimmune is a bit more nuanced, but we've helped people fully recover from lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, general inflammatory responses. Um, Once again, we're dealing with a situation. This is definitely rooted in dysregulation and often a huge amount of emotional repression. But even Bessel van der Kolk writes in his book that folks with trauma, the amount of autoimmune cells in their body are substantially higher than those without childhood trauma.
Mm,
Um, Again, we're in a protective response. What is the immune system's job? To protect you and fight off invaders.
yeah.
If it's in a constant war footing, its propensity to attack itself increases mightily.
Okay. I love the work of Bessel van der Kolk. I had done some internal family systems therapy in my 20s, and the therapist was like, oh, you should read this book because of my back and everything. I don't know. I didn't actually ever finish it though. But
Well, it's intense. Bessel's book is intense.
yeah, I was like, oh my God, this is fascinating. I need to like really be able to focus. And then like I would pick it up but yours is and I know, is he a mentor to you?
Yeah,
This is
yeah, yeah.
phenomenal. So that your book sort of picks up with like the tools in a way that's his book is
Exactly.
fascinating though.
Bessel's book is groundbreaking,
It was, and it
beautiful,
is still one of the
rel
best-selling books.
correct. Yeah, yeah. Can imagine a book on trauma more than 10 years after it's written, still on the bestsellers list.
Totally.
And he does provide evidence-based work that can help people recover from trauma. But in so many ways, they still require finding a practitioner, et cetera. And Jen and I, our goal was like, you've read The Body Keeps the Score, and you're kind of like, now what? Well, the secret language of the body is meant to walk you through now what, step by step, practice by practice, self-healing capacity after self-healing capacity.
Right. And also his book helped us realize the body is listening and paying attention and is carrying all this wisdom. And as you write in your book, like a lot of these things is the pain, and it's a gift if you pay attention to it, because it's the key to get you better again. And it's asking for you, it's asking for your care.
Correct. That back pain that I had,
Yeah.
what was under there? This is also quite well known, basically in the world of somatics and more progressive forms of psychotherapy that are body informed. We create significant psychological and physical defenses against our own emotional pain. Significant, right?
Yeah.
And they range from pure disassociation to like, I just don't remember, right? Amnesia is a gift when it comes to abuse and things like that, to just the active repression of not feeling. But you can't, it requires literal physical immobilization. So a lot of that tension and pain in my back was literally defenses, physical defenses and contractions protecting me against my own emotions that my brain deemed I couldn't feel.
Mm.
But what was the gift here? I did have to go into underneath that physical pain in my low back. There was so much anger and
Mm.
there was so much grief involved in having an opioid addicted mother who um, uh, neglected me, right, to put it ever so mildly. My parents were divorced, so my father wasn't there. Um, I had a stepfather who was present, but for many years we didn't have a very good relationship, and he was prone to bouts of anger. I was perpetually alone. Like talk about latchkey, like next level latchkey, you
Mm.
know? And the experience of a little boy, 5, 6, fully alone is agony. And
Mm.
again, if you may know this about child psychology, we are designed to be narcissistic. Everything is about us. We see the world through us. So anything bad happening to us, we're incapable of saying this is because mom's a drug addict and my stepdad has anger issues. You can't do that. You're narcissistically self-referential
Yes.
appropriately. It's not
Yes.
that, it's like, no, the only explanation for this is I'm a piece of shit.
Ah, you internalize it and it's you. You're the
Exactly.
reason. Yeah,
Right.
I got it.
So and there's no other way about it, right? Like it can only be about you. Um, and so that pain is too much, that emotional awfulness, so it gets repressed or disassociated, but it's still there. It doesn't go away.
Of course.
And that pain was the avenue through which I got access to this emotional backlog of rage and grief and sadness and abandoned aspects of myself. And that was also painful. But on the other side of it was a reconnection to the capacity of feel love, to feel joy,
Mm.
to get back in my body, to I always said that before I did this work, I knew I loved my wife, but now I really feel that I love my life,
Oh, that's beautiful, Karden.
right?
Yeah, your capacity to actually feel more and actually receive expanded exponentially, right?
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And that's the true juice of being alive.
yeah. We need to be able to feel.
Yeah.
And everything is scary, but our younger minds, like you said, they want to protect us. Is it in the amygdala that it's processing? Is that what I read? I don't want to say this wrong
No,
word.
no, the amygdala is the the danger
Rich.
center, but it's it's a whole brain body
It
experience,
is the whole brain body.
it's a whole brain body experience. And you wouldn't even be able to reference those centers in the brain. Like we reference that on MRI, we see where it's happening, but your experience of it is physical. Like you know what I mean? Like that freeze response you had, that feeling of terror. Yeah, we know that your PFC, your prefrontal cortex, goes offline, and your amygdala and some other parts of your hypothalamus turn on, et cetera, et cetera. That's all interesting. But what matters, and the reason why I wrote a book about the language of the body, is that the way you access it, it's not intellectually through where it is in your brain, but where you feel it in your body.
Yeah. And I think, did you read, I think on an Instagram post that you're essentially like your body was there just to carry your brain around, your head around. And I think a lot of us walk around like that because the emotions feel too scary because of whatever prior wounds or experiences that we are afraid to look at. And maybe we've totally pushed them aside or we've forgotten them on purpose, we've repressed them. And so help us understand the path forward then. I mean, there's so many tools in the book, but let's say somebody's listening, they either have autoimmune, they've got anxiety, they've got depression, maybe they have food sensitivities, and they didn't even realize these could be
Yeah.
signs of nervous system dysregulation.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
I would say, let's say a couple. I'll try to give a quick laundry list. As one of the things I'd first say, and I actually don't usually start out this way, is that if you're in therapy, let's just start there.
yeah,
Find a therapist who knows about nervous system regulation and involves the body. If you're just doing talk therapy, good news is that so many psychologists are catching up now. Like they just can't resist the wave. In this instance, social media has accelerated the dissemination of these ideas decades faster than they would have done if they were just in the conventional system.
yeah.
But also, I was at the Trauma Research Foundation conference in Boston in May. And do you know that not a single psychology program in the United States requires a course on trauma?
No, I did not know that. That's
You can't even believe what
unbelievable.
just came out of my
No, I
mouth,
just
right?
cannot even believe
Not
it.
a
That's
single one. And then it's under 30% have electives on it.
It's so frustrating. Every time I either have a medical doctor or a therapist, it's like you learn where all these gaps are and maybe understand why.
Right.
Yeah,
James talking about how like that's still, as far as the medical establishment concerned, it doesn't matter how you breathe. Just get the oxygen in you.
right,
Right.
right.
So the inertia of institutions is terrifying in how slow they adapt and come around. So
Oh,
simply to say, if you're in therapy, no matter how much you love your therapist, find one who understands nervous system regulation and knows how to involve the body. Because that's going to be a game changer, and it
okay.
helps to have a guide. Um, in our work, we talk about a framework or an approach, and we call it AIR, AIR. And AIR
Yes.
stands for awareness, interruption, and redesign.
Yep.
Awareness, folks, is as time honored as, the first step in fixing a problem is admitting you have one, or even
Yep.
knowing you have one, right?
Yep.
Or in the business world, we say you can't manage what you're not measuring, right?
Yep.
And in this case, guys, it's not about measuring yourself on a fitness tracker, although that's fine. This is becoming aware of the way your nervous system communicates through your body through things like sensations, whether I'm feeling light or I'm feeling heavy, whether I'm feeling something burny or whether I'm feeling cold, through emotions. I'm feeling frustrated, angry, I'm feeling anxious, nervous, scared. But not just the emotion. Where does that show up in my body? How do I know that? Oh, I feel this almost always present constriction around my chest. It's always there. How do I know it in my mind? That endless hamster wheel we talked about earlier, right?
Yep.
Um, so awareness is being trained to put your attention on the non-verbal language of your body, which, by the way, is how every other freaking animal on earth exists. We're the only one with language, guys. Okay. So
So true.
language's utility in regulating and understanding the nervous system is it has its place, but it's minor. You
Mm.
have to work with sensation, emotion, behaviors, actions, postures to start understanding this. And you'll start seeing, wow, uh, I've got signs all over my body and mind that I'm dysregulated. I thought it was normal because it's there all the time. I
Mm.
thought it was normal because all my girlfriends feel like that all the time. But that's not fucking normal. Okay. Two then becomes I, which is interrupt. And what I said to someone earlier today is that it's helpful to always think of yourself, especially neurologically and physiologically, as an adult duct taped to a child, bolted to an animal. And your
Say that
body,
again. Wait, what? A what?
you're an adult
Yes.
duct taped to a child,
Yes.
bolted to an animal.
Yes.
And the adult is actually on top, trying to control everything with this like wriggling, upset, moody, scared child underneath it, who's then also holding on for dear life to a freaked out animal.
Mm.
And your body is really the honest communicator of the uh, true state of the way your brain and autonomic nervous system, the way your like the body's telling the truth. And so if we always want to get into the mind, but if you see yourself exhibiting any of these signs of dysregulation, overthinking, constriction in your chest, get out of your head and get into your body. And
Mm.
so there's all sorts of interruption techniques, but they involve directly interfacing with the body with techniques that help stand down the survival response, make you feel safer. And in doing so, actually activate some of your um, self-regulatory capacities, your executive functioning, because your executive functioning goes down, down, down when you're stressed or in
Of
survival.
course. Yes.
And so you and I could play with just a few. Um, Breath is a great first interface. Um, we're just going to try one together, Michelle. We call it the Vu Ah E, and it's derived, I guess it originated with Peter Levine and the work of somatic experiencing. So uh, it is a extended, continuous sounding Vu Ah E. And what we'll do is we're going to take, in a moment, we're going to notice how we feel for about 5 seconds.
Okay.
Then we're going to take the breath. We're going to do a nice long Vu-ah-E together. And then we're going to notice for 5 or so seconds how we feel afterwards.
All right. Everyone do this with us. Here we
Yeah.
go.
So everyone just sit, tune in 5 seconds. If you were to rate your overall level of tension on a scale of 1 to 5, give it a number, 5 being the worst, 1 being the best. If there was a particular area in your body where you felt the most tension, jaw, chest, shoulders, and neck, note that. And notice the busyness or quality of your thoughts. And now we're going to take in full inhale. And then just notice, what is the impact of that one action? How's your overall level of stress, tension? Did it shift at all? Did the constriction or tension in that one area of your body shift at all? What happened to the activity in your mind? And that was after just one of these, much less a cycle of 3 minutes of it. Michelle, can you share anything?
Uh, my body literally was like, thank you. That was the
Hmm.
word. I literally felt thank you because I tend to not be in my body as much as my body wishes I was in there. I know that. I think just
Yeah,
any invitation or opportunity to sit and just come in just feels so good. So I think that's what the thank you was.
I love that. And yes, the nervous system tends to respond really positively to simply us paying attention to the body, usually, especially if it's in a regulatory way. Like it feels like a homecoming. It's regulatory to pay attention to self. And that vu ah e, that action vibrates all of the ventral, the front aspects of your vagus nerve, which are
Mm.
very stimulating of regulation. It also wakes up the area of your viscera, your belly, your lungs, your heart, and manually sends messages of regulation from the body up to the brain.
So fascinating.
And that's just a simple thing. But the reason why interruption is so important is that these techniques, the Vu-A-E, stomping, contraction and relaxing, we teach something called heavy work where you press your arms against the wall. We teach certain Qigong-like techniques. All of these work with your physiology and your energy system to do two brilliant things at once. One, it stops the default pattern. That's why we call it interrupting. The default pattern of just getting more anxious, the default pattern of working harder, the default pattern of procrastinating on your phone, the default pattern of going for the food, the default pattern of yelling at your spouse, right? The default pattern of retreating into yourself and just collapsing. We have to stop the old neural pathways from leaving the station.
Mm.
That's why we call it interruption. But we just so happen to be interrupting with somatic techniques that make us feel better. Go
Beautiful.
figure,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I, interruption. And then lastly, because we've made ourselves feel better, because we've moved the physiology out of survival response just enough, um, Viktor Frankl said that, I believe he said, but between stimulus and response, there's a gap. And in that gap is the space to choose. And that's what makes us, the choose. That's where change happens.
Mm.
Interruption and these nervous system modifiers create and widen the gap. And all of a sudden, you can start choosing a new action. I'm going to respond this way, or I'm going to actually continue with my nervous system modifiers with maybe some of James Nestor's breath techniques to make my body feel safe again. And then your mind's going to come up with a completely different action, a completely different thought, a different way of looking at things. You're going to redesign into maybe responses of, I'm not abandoned and worthless. I'm actually a good person that's surrounded by love. But you only have the time to make that choice, to make that pivot if you're interrupting. So awareness, interruption, redesign, last little thing, you're redesigning from step one. The simple act of being aware of what's going on in your body and being involved with your experience rather than just reacting instinctually, reflexively, being trapped by your own habits, you're already redesigning neural pathways as you start paying attention to self.
It's moving me so deeply, Carden. I can't even tell you. And the thought that just came to mind is we were talking about you have a 3-year-old. They're always in movement. They're so beautifully connected to their body and the energy and what's happening in their physiology. And right there, but just they're doing it just naturally. They're not so disconnected. And then with the experiences and with time and the fear and wanting to protect and need for safety, we shut
Yeah.
it down. And it's like, well, I'm comfortable in my brain. I'll just think my way into no solution, but it's
That's
comfortable
right.
because this is what I do.
I say that people, because their pain, because their body ends up experiencing so much pain. And when I say
Yeah.
that, I mean pain in the most literal and metaphysical way, right? Physical pain, emotional pain, psychological pain like the way the Buddha talks about it, right? The body
Yes.
experiences so much pain that we very sensibly retreat into the attic of our minds and we live there. That's why I knew I loved my wife but didn't feel it. We retreat into the attic. Not only that, we then kick the ladder that got us up there. We kick it over and burn it. And then we close the trap door to the attic. And then we do it so well, we forget that there's a house. And Michelle, one other thing I wanted to say is so many parents, so many adults ask me, how do I use these with how do I use this stuff with my children? Children are not supposed to be taught nervous system regulation through exercises. They are supposed to be taught nervous system regulation
Mm.
through you embodying it and modeling it in real time in every moment. Now, I don't
Yes.
say that as a burden. I say that's just the fucking reality. They are mirroring, modeling, and learning implicitly, explicitly, unconsciously, consciously, somatically, and intellectually every second, whether you are meaning to or not. And this doesn't mean we have to be perfect. By the way, attachment theory has taught us that if we're not going to get into that now, but that uh, the most resilient children are not raised in perfect attachment. It's it's the rule of three. One third connection, one third rupture, one third repair. That process of rupture leading to repair of a nervous system knowing that bad things can happen in relations and then they come back in a loving and connected way, that is what creates incredibly resilient, capable, functional people. Children that are raised in a house with too much rupture are effed up, and children that are raised in a house with no rupture, like those people that are raised by two psychologist parents, those kids are really effed up because the parents didn't allow for rupture and repair. They were just kind of perfect. So anyway, if you're a parent listening, do not think about how I can teach this to my kids. Think about how you can really work on making your body a true home of regulation, of safety, of ease, of holding, of softness, of power, of resilience, of flexibility, of being able to go up and come back to baseline, of being able to go into sadness and come back up to baseline, to be able to get mad and then love and repair. That's your work. And then your
Mm.
kids are just going to have it.
Karden, I cannot, there's so much we could go on for like another hour. There's so much here, but your book is so beautiful. The Secret Language of the Body, which is co-written with you work together, Jennifer Mann,
Yep,
who's
my
a,
lovely business partner. She's my work wife, not my real wife.
there you go, work wife. And there's so much more to dig into and understand, but is there anything we didn't touch upon today that you want to leave the women listening with, Karden?
Mhm. I guess what I'd offer is because if you're listening because you care. You care about yourself. You care about re-inhabiting your power. You care about your impact and your expression in the world. And this work that Michelle and I have been talking about all day, this is a very male language, but it's a cheat code. It really is. This is a black box that's unexamined inside of you. Your nervous system is making decisions for you all the time. It is having those autonomic responses. It is recognizing patterns and deploying habits nonstop in this mostly unconscious way. And it's determining so much of your life. And it's often where everything else hasn't worked, guys, where mindset hasn't worked, where accountability hasn't worked, where trying new behaviors haven't worked. They are collapsing and not working because there are deeper wounds and scars, deeper things that your brain and body and nervous system are protecting you from. And when you do this work, you bring that to light. And under and in the presence of that light, especially if you're doing it with love and support from others, from a therapist, from a really compassionate way inside of you, those fears that have been running things for decades get integrated, metabolized, resolved, and moreover, you regain that power because fear takes your energy. Your body needs to deploy a lot of energy to keep fear in place and to defend you against it. So
Mhm.
much of your chi, your prana, your life force is tied up and keeping that shit locked up. And when you don't have to do that anymore, it just comes back into you. And I wish everyone would do this work.
I wish everyone would do this work. I'm going to do this work. I mean,
Mm,
that's why are we here? This is the healing is part of it and the reintegration and the remembering of our soul. And we have to give it that chi, that energy, that prana, right? It needs our life force. But if it's bogged down in fear and old wounds, and gosh, let's heal that child. Let's bring her,
yes.
right? You talked about the adult that, yeah, like heal this child and integrate it and let her feel free again the way we
Uh,
came in. right?
And then she'll give you her childish energy back. Like that's the thing. I have a 6 and a 3-year-old. They are uninhibited dynamos,
It's
right?
beautiful.
And
Yes.
imagine having that back.
Yeah, we all deserve that. So, where can people learn more about you and the work that you and Jennifer are doing? And give us like where you hang out so I can put
Yeah,
that in the show notes.
I'd love that. So, Instagram is our playground, at Karden Rabin. Our company is at Somia International, and Jen is I am Jen Mann. That's where we're always having this conversation, always giving tips, always educating. Um, and then SomiaInternational.com is where we really do two things. We have that book, we have our book, The Secret Language of the Body, which is the one-stop shop for entry and really powerful nervous system regulation. And then on our online platform, we have our flagship Heal program, which is the one designed for chronic illness, for chronic pain, for those food sensitives, for those gut issues. So if you're looking to recover from the chronic physical impacts and symptoms and disorders of nervous system regulation, that's what that's for. And then one other thing I'd love to offer you, Michelle, is we have something called the Nervous System Practice Pack, which
Okay.
is 4 really beautiful somatic exercises, guided exercises that lead people into this awareness of the body, to some nervous system modifiers, interruption techniques, and it's free. And we can just put that in the show notes. And then we need to have another conversation, Michelle.
I think there's going to be a part two for sure. And ladies, all of this information will be on literally your podcast player. So if you look down in there, those links that Carden just mentioned will all be there and easily accessible, or you can find them over at thegoodlifecoach.com. This is such an important conversation. Share it with every one of your friends. Nervous system regulation is the path forward for a beautiful, more peaceful planet, too. I mean, gosh, if we're not all
For sure.
reacting and we're not in pain, we're getting healthier and more vibrant. I mean, this is where it's at. And Carden, you have such a beautiful heart. I've just loved being with you today. I've loved this connection. I appreciate the work that you're doing in the world. And I'm grateful to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I really mean that. Thank you.
Thank you.